evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Wall of Power TV. I'm your host, Paul Metsa. We have a great guest on tonight. Mr. Dan Israel has just released his 14th album called You Are Free. We talk about his life in music starting in the early 90s in Chicago. Then he moved down to Austin, Texas, where I met him in 1993. Over the years, he's played with everybody from Morrissey, Loudon Wainwright, Todd Snyder, the Tragically Hip, Peter Himmelman, and more. He's a great guy. He's a lifer in the biz. He's a single dad raising a lovely daughter and a lovely son, and he is back on the scene after he quit his day job after 21 years. We talk about life and music, being a single dad, the Iron Range, where his mother is from, his records, his music. We're going to hear his music, see some videos, and have a great conversation. Welcome to Wall of Power TV. And with no further ado, my guest and old buddy, Dan Israel. Dan, thanks for being here tonight.
Hey, Paul. Good to see you.
You look great, man. I
Thank
know
you.
you've been busy.
Too. I've been real busy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you've got a new record out called You Are Free.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to guess part of it is because you had a day job working at the state capitol for how long?
21 years.
Wow.
21 years for the reviser of statutes.
And what the hell is that?
I revised a hell of a lot of statutes. I mean, helped to revise them. Proofread, just a lot of words over the years.
Wow.
It was a nonpartisan office, so it gagged me a little as far as politics goes.
Right.
Too. Although I kind of.
But now you are free.
I'm free. Exactly.
And most of the time you were doing it as a single dad raising two kids.
Yeah.
Plus playing music.
Yeah. At least I've removed the day job from that crazy equation, and what I've been noticing lately is I keep asking myself, how did I do all this and do the job?
Right.
Because I feel like I'm busy right now. Not like I was, but
right.
Yeah, I mean, you know how music is just a full-time job it just is because booking and promoting and recording and writing.
Promoting now just on social media is a full-time job.
It is a full-time job. And every time somebody tells you there's a new thing you got to do, you just want to tear your hair out.
Right. Right.
Like somebody just gave me a hard time a couple months ago, in a good way, a constructive way, about not being on Instagram.
Right. I was going to say Instagram. That's the new.
I said,
I'm
not doing it. I'm not doing it. A week later, there I am on Instagram. And everyone's on it. I was like, oh, I guess you're all here.
Right.
But I didn't want to come to that party, but I invited myself after all. So.
Back when I was getting started with Cats into the Stars in the early 80s, we'd get a couple hundred posters the middle of February. Oh. One guy would take Dinkytown, one guy would take the West Bank.
All street work.
Yep, one guy would take Uptown.
Freezing, your ass off. I remember putting up a poster by the 400 bar one night, and I got frostbite.
Yeah, and then the posters would fall down, and the wind would blow them across the street.
The worst. How about all the mailing you had to do with postcards? Didn't you? Did you used to send out postcards? Here's one I got for you too. And this, I actually wanted to talk to you about this, whether we were on the air or not. But I was thinking how much time we spend now on email booking, right? How much time though? What did we used to do? We used to have to make phone calls, right? That was particularly egregious.
Right.
I mean, calling about booking to actually have to get rejected right over the phone immediately.
Exactly.
Now they just ignore your emails or your texts or your messages. But back then, you literally got told, you're not what we're, I can't book you, or, you actually got rejections. And I think part of the problem right now is people don't know they're losing their ability to talk on the phone and give rejections.
Right.
So that they ghost you on everything.
Right.
You know how you mean.
Well, and then, I think that's a good point, Dan, to talk about, especially for any of the non-musicians out there, that you put out this is your 14th or 15th record?
14th, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So besides being rejected by club owners, festival promoters, hostile audiences.
Everyone.
Asshole band members, then occasionally you get a bad review.
Oh, you sure do. I just did this thing. I'll tell you, I don't know. I won't use the name of it, but there is a service that purports to send your music around to blogs.
Right.
And you pay.
Right.
Okay? So I just...
Well, you always got to pay somebody.
So I spent very little money on it, so I don't feel like that big of a fool. I spent, nominal amount of money the other day. and it sent the title track to my new album. It went around to some blogs, and they all got rejected. Like, I was like, but worse yet, the feedback was so ignorant,
right,
and so pointless.
Right.
Like one guy said, "This sounds like the Lemonheads." Okay.
Right.
Okay, which song? I mean,
right.
That's all you got?
Right.
Like, I think it just
you
maybe
can do better than that.
You can do better, you know. And then you can rate their feedback. And I gave them like 1 star because you're gonna crap on me.
Right.
I mean, some of them were nice, and I hate to be so defensive, and I know that they're getting bombarded. I understand there's always both sides.
Right.
We've been on both sides. We've booked people. We've had to we've had to avoid people or whatever.
Where I learned to kind of just temper any bad reviews I've gotten over the years, and I've gotten more than my share.
Mm-hmm.
Years ago.
Locally?
Huh?
Locally?
Oh, yeah, there was a few.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, you don't have to name names, but
no, I won't.
Yeah.
Do you remember a guy named Mark Gaddis? He was older than us.
I remember the name.
Yeah, but he was one of the folkies in the mid to late 70s, early 80s, back when some of these guys were actually releasing, when you could find a place to press albums, right? Which was unique in the 70s on independently. And anyway, so he puts out this record, I forget what it was called, and then re-releases it about a year and a half or 2 years later. Same record with different artwork, right? So
you're giving me an idea here.
So the reviewer, I believe it might have been Sweet Potato, which was the precursor to City Pages. It might have been City Pages, and this was my glimpse into the music critic's mind. The reviewer said, "It's not a bad work, but for sure it's a marked improvement over his last record." It was the same damn record.
See, now, part of me, the mischievous side of me, wants to pull this trick to see if that happens. Because, when I say I don't think people are listening to it, I mean it.
Right.
And you know it to be true, right? That the odds of people actually, and now, of course, with the way it's set up now where you can like track how many plays something got on SoundCloud or Bandcamp, you literally know if they listened to part of it or all of it.
Right.
And you see these partial listens and you're just like, really? Like, a 2.5-minute song and you just couldn't get all the way through it, huh?
Right.
This idea of doing a stunt of some type does appeal to me,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a little bit too much of a wuss to do like, I'll just give you an example of a stunt that maybe went a little awry. I did an April Fool's joke one year, back before social media, but we were on email. I said that I got signed to J Records by Clive Davis, and it was all a joke about that Santana album.
Right.
Like I said, Rob Thomas from Matchbox 20 and all this stuff.
Right.
Well, I thought it was so preposterous that no one would ever think it was real.
Right.
Boy, was I wrong. And the phone we had a common phone at my job at the legislature.
Right.
So this is, in those days, it just started ringing all morning for me. People were calling to congratulate me at work. And I had to sit there and tell them all that it was a joke. And many people were not pleased. Because, they, in all sincerity, they were so happy for me.
And then you're calling out of an office at the state capitol, so when your boss walks by, you have to pretend like you're on official business.
It didn't look good. It didn't look good. And there were people who were genuinely sore at me for a while about it. So that's probably the last April Fool's joke I ever played.
You know what's funny, though? Lifers like yourself, myself, Steve Tibbetts, you just develop, it gives you a greater sense of humor.
Yep.
And your sense of humor is your armor, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Like Brownie McGee used to say, he said, "My guitar is my weapon against the world."
How do you possibly survive in this business as long as people like yourself and without some kind of thick skin or some kind of defense to all this rejection and all this humiliation and ego your ego takes a beating, then it gets like a temporary boost for a few minutes, and you're like, I've arrived, and then 5 minutes later, or not literally 5 minutes, figuratively 5 minutes later, nobody takes your calls.
Right. Well, Steve Tibbetts told me his favorite bad review, was real short when it said, "I'd rather listen to a refrigerator hum than listen to this record."
Oh.
We got Dan Israel on. We're going to listen to You Are Free, the title track of his new disc. He'll be with us on the whole show tonight.
All of the sky can be yours. You got to hear and the best indoors. After you tried out all their cures, you're free. No one can tell you what to do. After the trials you fell into, they don't have a clue what they ain't been through or seen. Now you get to say what you wanna be. Nobody else can choose your destiny. You can drag these chains around and you stay. You can let them be. Nobody knows what you felt inside. You were along for the lonely ride. How you emerged with your pride is a mystery. And all of the world's your oyster now. No, you're not used to the choice of how. You can proceed or retreat or just disagree. Now only you get to make the call. If you're set up, you gotta take the fall. Now only you have to blame for your misery.
Grumpy's is the place to be for Art Whirl and our 20th anniversary bash on May 19th. Superchunk comes to Grumpy's Northeast May 19th to promote their first album in 5 years, What a Time to Be Alive. Join the fun May 19th for Art Whirl 2018 and jam with Superchunk at Grumpy's Northeast.
I want you to meet Two Gingers Irish Whiskey. I'm Kieran and I'm Irish, so I tend to like a challenge. Why not? I wanted a whiskey to help find me out what's out there. Like what's really out there. And I found the oldest distillery in Ireland with a water wheel and awards for its small family of whiskies in the middle of Ireland. As I've always seen it, you can't win the lottery unless you buy a ticket. So try it. The investment is small and the flavor is big. It's perfect for drinking neat. Its character holds up, like the Irish, when the bastards try to get you down. Two Gingers Irish Whiskey. Distilled twice for more character, time for more flavor, and less of the old burn. No lite bastardes carborundum. Don't let the bastards get you down.
This program is brought to you in part by Iron Range Resources and Rehabilitation.
Welcome back to Wall of Power TV. I'm your host, Paul Metsa. My guest for the whole show tonight, my old buddy Dan Israel, who's got a great new record out, his 15th.
14th.
14th.
You're rushing.
I'm getting ahead of my...
Yeah.
I don't want to put any pressure on you for the follow-up, dude.
Yeah, I don't even have any songs written for the 15th yet.
You know, we were talking on the break about technology, and now everybody with a little home studio are actually on their phone,
right?
Can record a record.
Yes.
And send it out to get reviewed.
Yes.
So.
And we all want to encourage people to explore their creative side, right?
Yes, we do.
Right.
We do. Well, as a dad, you do that with your kids, right?
Nurture, be supportive, even if sometimes the fledgling steps are difficult to, endure.
Right. The beauty of the old school A&R guys, whether it's Ahmet Erdogan or the Chess Brothers or John Hammond.
Lenny Waronker.
Yeah, Lenny Waronker.
Yeah.
Where they were kind of the ears to let you into the kingdom.
Right.
Right? The gatekeepers and the ears to hear if you were good enough to get into the kingdom.
But they had good ears a lot of the time.
Right.
Do you trust Pitchfork to be the gatekeeper? I mean, I'm just saying the idea that a live performance of the song properly isn't even really necessary anymore to be able to create something in the studio. But it's just part and parcel of all the larger weirdness that we're encountering with technology. And there's a wonderful democratization that occurred with recording equipment coming down in price and scope, because of digital and the ability to do all these things with microchips. And, there's a great aspect of it all, okay? But it also means that everybody and his brother and sister now makes records, puts them out there, and I'm not trying to argue that you or I are entitled to some greater consideration.
Right.
Except I am trying to argue that.
Right.
Because
Kids get off my lawn.
It's a freaking hobby.
Yeah.
For people.
Right.
And that's great. And I don't want to. Everybody has a right to release. Of course, they have the right to. But should they? No, I don't know. It's when you hear the critics and people who run blogs and all these things complain about the deluge of stuff they get.
Right.
I think they're telling the truth.
Yeah.
They're telling the truth that it's impossible to wade through how much is out there now. The internet has just, for a long time, I'm sure you and I heard all the wonderful things the internet was going to do for music and for our careers, and how it'd be so easy to just put things out there to the whole world. Aha! But they have to find it.
Right.
And who controls that?
Right.
Google, Facebook,
right.
All these titans, Amazon,
right.
These huge mega monopolistic type corporations are now controlling the internet, whether we like it or not.
When did your first record come out?
So I grew up here in St. Louis Park and had some bands in high school, and then I went off to college at Northwestern in Chicago as a film student, and then I started doing demo tapes in Chicago. So, I'm sure you had tapes, right?
Oh, yeah.
Before you had CDs. And so I had a couple tapes with One Town Horse was the first. That was in Chicago, and we had some shows in Chicago in the clubs and stuff too. We opened for Reverend Horton Heat at the Lounge Acts, owned by Jeff Tweedy's wife. I don't think they were married back then, but Sue Miller, who's married to Jeff Tweedy of Wilco now, she owned the Lounge Acts, and we had the night the first Gulf War broke out, we opened for Reverend Horton Heat at the Lounge Acts.
Wow.
So that was, I think, January 16th, 1991 or something like that, but
wow.
Right in there.
Tweedy, that'd be a good producer for you.
Oh, yeah. I need to get him my stuff, don't I?
Yeah.
I met him once at First Avenue, but it was a Golden Smog thing, and he didn't know me from anyone. But yeah, I love Wilco. Yeah.
We will be back after this with our guest Dan Israel. I'm Paul Metsa, your host on Wall of Power TV.
Impeccable grooming don't make you human. You are what you dream. Everyone hurt and feel like blurring out a primal scream. Can't let go of the feeling that you're running short on time. Somehow I'm feeling it now. I'm gonna make this life mine. Your bills and you took your spills, you fought nail in tooth. It was staring right at you while you captured the giveaway sign. Somehow I'm feeling it now, I'm gonna make this life mine.
Welcome back to Wall of Power TV. I'm your host, Paul Metsa. My guest in the studio for the whole show tonight, Mr. Dan Israel. He's got a new record out called You Are Free. He's been doing this for a while. It's his 14th record. We've got some shared history together.
Shared, yeah.
First
We've
of all,
walked similar paths.
Yes, well, we didn't meet in Minneapolis. We met in Austin, Texas.
In '93, we figured out, or something like that.
Was it at South by Southwest?
It was at the Chicago House.
Right.
Or outside. I think you were playing at the Chicago House.
Okay.
And I went down, and I knew of you. I knew Jim Anton.
Yeah.
And so I knew of you.
You developed quite a head of steam down in Austin.
That was my first real, foray. And in Chicago, I, put my toe in the water of Lake Michigan. But
right.
In Austin, I was pretty fully committed to really going for it. So we had this band Potter's Field in Austin, and we played a lot. I mean, I was only living there 3 years, but we played a lot. We toured back up here in Chicago a couple times and put out a CD, which at that time, as you know, was kind of a big deal.
Right.
In the early 90s, it was still a big deal to put out a CD. So, but then we broke up. I don't know, do you know Beaver Nelson?
Oh, yeah. I actually booked Beaver at Maslax.
Oh, yeah.
With Scrappy
Scrappy
Judd.
Judd, yeah. Well, this is a very long and convoluted story that I won't bore everyone with.
But Beaver's one of the very well-respected songwriters now in Austin.
Exactly. And he had a record deal at the time with James Cameron, like Titanic.
Right.
He started a label called Lightstorm and flew, Beaver went to, I think, Nashville or Memphis. It was Memphis. I don't know if it was Ardent. Might have been Ardent Studios.
Wow.
Probably was. But our bass player in our band sort of, that's why our band sort of broke up, is because he ended up playing with Beaver at the time. So
Let's kick his ass.
well, Beaver and I have joked about it. So I think it's water under the proverbial bridge.
Right.
But.
So when did you move back up to the Twin Cities to start performing here?
Oh, and by the way, I just wanted to add to that.
Yeah.
Fastball was part of that whole, the band Fastball. They were Beaver's band too, so it's hard to explain it a little bit.
Right.
But if people know Fastball and they're friends of mine, Tony Scalzo, Miles Zuniga, they were in the scene at that time too and played with Beaver too. So that was kind of interesting. So the band broke up in Austin. I stayed there another year, and then at the end of '95, I moved back here.
Okay.
And I had never really played in the scene here, until then. I'd maybe come up and play at the new Riverside Cafe a couple times. Do you remember who the booker was? It's somebody.
Yes, Al.
Al.
Who passed away.
Yes, he did. Yes,
Al's name will come to me by the end of the show.
I know.
But he had a phenomenal archive of tapes and posters, and he donated it. They had a fundraiser, and they donated his archive to the University of Minnesota.
Oh, good. Him and John Fenner also gave me.
Oh, yes,
he had an open mic.
Friends.
He had an open mic like at the Artist Quarter.
Artist Quarter, yeah, for sure.
Five Corners too, maybe. I might have gone down. So those were my first gigs, but when I moved back, then I started playing. I formed the band, the Cultivators, Dan Israel and the Cultivators, and played with the band a lot and put out albums in the late '90s. And the lineup for the band changed drastically in '99. The Mill City music, we call it the Mill City Meltdown.
Right.
Our band broke up on stage in a possibly hilarious moment, if enough time has passed, where I threw my guitar and I had a temper tantrum. It was very mature.
You're such a prima donna, Israel.
Yeah, it was very mature of me. But
and I bet you got that gig through our mutual friend, the late great Sue McLean.
The late great Sue McLean, which we were just talking about how what an impact she had on both of us and
on the music scene in general.
I mean, you can't really. It's incalculable, isn't it?
It really is.
She's dearly missed.
She's had, if you look at all the shows she booked, hundreds, if not thousands, of shows of you. The old Guthrie Theater, the Walker Arts Center, the Minnesota Zoo, Basilica Block Party, you name it. She's had her hands on it. She's provided as much musical satisfaction to Minnesotans as Prince or Dylan.
I think it's fair. I think it's a fair statement. Bobby V, you and I were. Well, I don't know if at the same time, but there was that Dylan Symposium.
Yes,
Dave Marsh
2007.
was here. I think maybe
you and I were on Dave Marsh's
we
radio
were
show.
with Bobby. With Bobby V. Yep.
And he looked like $1 million, didn't he?
Oh, he sure
He
did.
was buff and he was
sure
tan
did.
and he
Yeah.
couldn't have been sweeter.
Oh, what a nice guy.
Yeah.
And the role he played in rock history, it's monumental. It's hard to, you can't overstate it.
Well,
with the Buddy Holly thing.
the last year he was alive, I think it was in 2014 when Dylan played Midway Stadium.
The shout out,
Yeah.
Susie Baby.
Yeah, Susie Baby played Bobby V's first hit. And I remember I was there with my girlfriend. And, Dylan speaks so rarely in concert.
Yes.
And so he was talking, and I told my girlfriend, I said, hey, we got to listen. And he went into this beautiful soliloquy about how much he loved Bobby V. It was touching.
It was very touching.
And
no,
moving.
was Bobby there?
Bobby was there.
Okay, I thought he was. I stands to reason. Were you in Duluth when Bob played with Paul Simon and he said, I grew up in those hills?
Yeah.
That's another moment like that where I think everyone sort of, he's actually opening up here because he so rarely does. Because we just had Willie Nelson's 85th birthday, right?
Right.
Well, and this is a long story, but the taping of Willie's 60th birthday party, and Bob was there, and so was everybody else on the planet. And I tried to hand him my demo tape that night, and he sort of had a bodyguard guy who took it out of Bob said thanks. He said, I distinctly heard him say thanks.
Right.
But then the guy took it out of Bob's hand and handed it back to me as if it was some kind of, weapon or something. But
because we've all done it. We've all given our David Carr used to, when we did backstage together, if I had a record out and whoever we were going to see, David Carr used to refer to it as me sliming people.
Right.
Which kind of how you feel.
That's pretty much how it feels, yes, to be on that end of it.
But Carla Bly used to say, now this was back in the days when people would give you your demo cassette tapes.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And she goes, no, I don't mind it. She goes, but just make sure you don't take the tabs out. So she could, of course,
use the tape. Use the tape. That's funny. That's funny.
Well, there was that great version of Poncho and Lefty.
Yeah,
with Willie and Bob.
Yep. And people can go watch. I mean, I just watched it a couple weeks ago because still seems surreal to me that I was there that night for that thing. So once in a while I go watch a clip from it. Wow, that was, I got to meet Ben Montench and Kenny Aronoff and Don Was and Willie Nelson.
Right.
Yeah.
Dan Israel on Wall of Power TV. I'm your host, Paul Metsa.